Greetings to Professor um, Scott and Marcia and class members. This is my brief presentation on for this week sin and evil in the context of my community. And as I've expressed before, I'm at the Goshen Church, which is basically all um, African American membership congregation. And I had put in my post that my understanding of their belief of sin and evil, primarily, I would say for the great majority, stands on a pillar foundation of belief, um, which is listed in this book. There are actually now 28 uh, biblical expositions of fundamental doctrine. So, as far as what Seventh day Adventists believe, one of the foundational beliefs is, as far as sin and evil goes, that there is a great controversy which started originally in heaven from the action of Lucifer, who was um, a covering cherub or angel who became self absorbed in himself, obviously, and decided that he wanted to be God. And with that, he caused a rebellion in heaven with a certain following. And eventually, there was a cosmic battle from which he was expulsed from heaven to roam the earth. And currently, that is what is occurring in each one of our lives. There's a small scene or play or scenario of the great controversy in our individual lives every single day, in the understanding that we have a constant choice between good and bad and right and wrong, from the most smallest decision as to whether we will take care of our bodies, which should be the temple of God, is the temple of God, in our dietary selections, to the things that we read and allow as entertainment in our life, sometimes garbage in, garbage out. But the smallest behaviors, from dishonesty to honesty, from deciding as to whether you'll drink a Coke or a glass of water, whether you will get adequate sleep or you will cheat yourself on sleep. There are so many things, and Satan is involved to pressure us to make choices that would deter us from being good stewards of ourselves, our time, our body, our thoughts, our energy, our goals, um, for the cause of the kingdom of God. So Satan is out to destroy us and destroy every relationship and anyone that chooses to follow Jesus. So that's the premise of my church. And with that, I'm using, excuse me, a book theologian that I'm using in my project, as you're quite familiar with, is Marjorie Suchaki. This is the main book I'm using, God, Church, Christ, A Practical Guide to Process Theology, though she has several books, and each of them are just so replete with pearls of wisdom theologically and specifically in um, process theology in our relationship to God, or God being relational. Another book of hers is Theological Reflections on Prayer in God's Presence, and also The Fall to Violence, Original Sin in Relational Theology. So I have found an abundance of understanding in relation to sin and evil in her writings and process theology. Basically, summed up, she starts with that sin is first and foremost a rebellion against creation. It is considered, sin has been considered primarily a rebellion against God throughout most of Christian history. But sin is also the violence of rebellion against creation. So this she has a whole chapter here on original sin, which discusses the kind of Augustine root of sin in a heavenly conflict prior to the creation of the earth. as I mentioned in the Great Controversy a little bit earlier. And she just goes on to discuss that we have since the Adamic fall or the fall in Eden, that lust marks every human action, with lust being the desire for finite things in and of themselves apart from reference to God. So, Augustine was a key person in developing the original sin theory. Um, and she just has so many things that um, are pearls of wisdom here in terms of spirit is that aspect of humanity that is capable of transcending itself. Um, there was one section because we are both nature and spirit, and we have freedom. So there's one section that I especially liked where she discusses the choices that we have in terms of our makeup. Self-transcendence can be established through the social and temporal construction of the self in at least three modes. And for me, this is just pivotal um, reference. It says three modes. In relation to number one, we have one's own past through memory. Number two, in relation to others in the present through empathy. And number three, in relation to the future through imagination. So this is how she explains how we can transcend um, this tendency to fall from God, to fall from nature, and to wallow in sin. Um, the so healing is possible from sin and overcoming sin and the results of sin, which some of the evil is natural, which cannot be controlled, be that illness or natural disasters, which we see on this earth. But as far as our personal tendency to sin, we have choices. And again, I'll tie that up with process theology that we are forever evolving in this world, in God's world. And minute by minute, God is giving us each nanosecond millions of choices, um, and hoping that we will make better choices that will help us to evolve personally and to help this world evolve toward the kingdom, the ideal kingdom of God that God would have in mind for us. So there'll be more to follow, and I find I'm very comfortable with process theology and its explanation and evolution of how the kingdom of God can be manifest in each one of us and in this world. And I thank God that we have a God who is relational to each one of us individually and collectively as all creatures. So we will all be continuing in our projects, and I wish well in your research and mine in our final compilation. Thank you very much.